Hello and welcome to the Preserving History and Democracy podcast. My name is Cynthia Mendoza, Communications Coordinator for the Doña Ana County Clerk's Office. And today is kind of a special bonus episode, one of those kind of random episodes we decided to do.
Spontaneous.
Yes, we love it. I'm joined today by Bernardine Caporale, our producer, and we have an incredible guest for you today. Do you want to introduce our guest?
This is Mr. Sam Toles. He's the founder of CiviSocial. Did I say that right?
You did.
I did. Great. So welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a delight to be here in Doña Ana County, especially in the clerk's office. I love the name of this podcast. Let's take a moment. Preserving history and democracy. It's really core to what I do. It's like it's the passion behind the work that I've chosen to do. So thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet to hear.
Yes, I love that. Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Sam. I'm a kid from Buffalo, New York, who both my parents are teachers, really valued and so grateful for having, education sit fundamental and core to my life. I have had a career that I honestly could never have imagined, being from a relatively small city, a Rust Belt city. You think about Buffalo, and it's, it had seen its best days when I was growing up there. It's transformed since then, but not a lot of hope to do the things that one imagines and aspires to do. But after college, got my degree in political science and then moved to Los Angeles pursuing this idea that I could do something in the media business. And oh my goodness, did I do something in the media business? I got to, be a marketing leader at the major motion picture studios, Warner Brothers, New Line Cinema, Paramount Pictures, then transitioned to the music industry with Rhino Records before going back into media, Fremantle, which produces everything from American Idol to The Price is Right. I got to hang out with Bob Barker on his 80th birthday, which was as a child who watched Bob Barker on sick days, that was to me one of the coolest moments. And it became really a technology forward media person. I was very early when streaming happened. I had sort of thought of this idea before Netflix even evolved, and so got very involved in the streaming business. But I think my claim to fame is social media. I had the privilege of getting to run the Vimeo platform back in 2014. And I saw social media for the first time, 11 years ago, and realized that everything we knew about media, being somebody who'd produced television, who had produced films, who had been in marketing and all this traditional media space, I watched how young people were interacting with this new medium, and I realized that their relationship with social media was my relationship when I was a young person with television. And so I became really, really focused, got to run Bleacher Report, which is the world's largest social media sports platform. I also have had the privilege of working with creators that have audiences totaling in the billions of followers, including the team at Mr. Beast and names that you wouldn't have heard of like Tubbo and Amesy and Rambo and just a bunch of really cool, Austin Show. So many cool people I've had the privilege of working alongside and getting to know. But I burned out. I had done my media job for 26 years and rose to the highest heights. And I go back to the premise of this show and what I said at the very beginning, which is I realized democracy meant something and that people were losing their connection. We are a representative democracy that requires that the people that you serve in the clerk's office, that the county serves, that vote for their representatives, have to feel connected to that government and to the services in that government that are their advocates. And this has been lost. This has been lost so profoundly. When we look at survey data, for example, Gallup in September did a survey, and they asked a large sample of people, do you trust the federal government? Absolutely not. Do you trust your state government? Absolutely not. Do you trust the media? Lowest ever recorded survey from Gallup. 31% of people trust the media, lower for Congress, similar for president and federal. The trust has been lost. you know what? The one place that we see trust remains is local government. And so the reason I founded CiviSocial and the reason I'm on a mission to help local governments really transform the way they connect with their citizens using social media as that vehicle is because this is the only way that we can rebuild democracy. And so that's what I do at CiviSocial. I help governments like Doña Ana learn how to apply the things I've learned about this medium to connect with the people that they represent.
Cool. That kind of brought us to our next question, which was how it was created. How was CiviSocial created?
So as I mentioned, I had sort of burned out my media career. There wasn't anything left to do, right? I was having a conversation. One of my dearest friends runs the Tubi platform, and I've got a lot of Hollywood friends, right? And she said to me, she's like, there's nothing really that you can do that you haven't done, and you've always been interested in like having impact. And so as you think about what you want to do, what does that look like for you? And my mother, of all people, I'm going to rewind the clock for 2 seconds and say, like, I did serve as a city council member in California when I was there in Cathedral City, California. I had the privilege of representing that community for 4 years before I joined Vimeo. And my mother, who had lived in the city at the time I was a representative, said, you should really go back into local government. Like, you did so many amazing things when you were on the council. Now, I am about to celebrate my 16th wedding anniversary, and I can tell you my spouse says absolutely no. Like, I cannot not ever go and put my name in the hat for election, just because it's challenging, mostly for the spouse. Like, they've got to be a public facing person too, and that's just something that we weren't willing to do. So I really was puzzled with my mother's like challenge of like, you need to do something with local government. And I said, well, I'm too old to put on a policeman's uniform or a firefighter's uniform. I don't have the qualifications to be a county manager or a city manager. I don't know how I would do that. And one day I was driving, I live in Florida, but I keep a home in Buffalo, and I frequently go between my homes. I was in the middle of a field in West Virginia or Pennsylvania, and whether it was God or the universe, this thunderbolt struck my head. It's like, you are the world's foremost expert in social media, and local government needs help understanding and using this medium for good, for positive, to connect people to democracy. And I don't know, you get moments in your life where like it's profound. I mean, it almost took my breath away. I'm on the freeway and I'm like, this is amazing. I don't know what that looks like. So I spent the next like 8 hours as I drove thinking, what could this be? And a couple things sort of came to me. The first one was, I want to serve as many governments as possible. So if you set up a consulting business, the first thing that consultant want is like consistent revenue, right? Get in with a client, because it takes a long time to win people's trust and get them to say yes. And as you guys in government know, like the procurement process, like there's a lot to win over a client. And so for a lot of consultants, it's all about like, how do I extend that opportunity to make as much money as I can for as long a period? I wanted nothing to do with that.
That's marketing.
That's marketing,
Yes.
exactly. And we'll talk about that in a second. My mission was, how can I serve as many local governments as possible? So when I set this up, the first premise that I had in my head was a week to 2 weeks, depending on the size of government, is all I need to transform them, to make them amazing at social media, because I've done it and I knew it could be done in a short period of time. The second thing was, it's not about hiring a marketing firm. It's not about getting a group of communication specialists. The secret and the magic behind creating that connection between the agency and the people it serves is the people in the agency. Why? Because people like you are fellow neighbors and fellow residents here in Doña Ana County, right? Like, you're doing service to help your neighbors, but that service is like, you're a neighbor, they're a neighbor. And so how do we create that connection? So that's the premise of how CiviSocial kind of was born. And I'm proud to say, just celebrated my 1 year anniversary, and we've been to 15 clients you're our 15th local government in 13 states.
That's awesome.
Wow, bravo.
Love that.
Thank you.
Can you tell us how important it is for us to be storytellers?
Yeah, this is a really, really great question. I see a lot of local governments that post positions similar to yours: producer, coordinator, media specialist, social media, public information officer. There's a number of different roles in local government that are really thinking about how to communicate with the residents. And, I started my career in marketing. And so I have an affinity for marketing. I know what marketing is. But marketing is selling people things, right? Marketing is about getting people to listen to a message. This is not the mission of the clerk's office. This is not the mission of Doña Ana County.
That is so true.
Right? Your mission is to serve your residents. Your mission is to empower them to engage in elections. Your mission is to get them marriage licenses. You have so many things that you guys in this office do, right? This is not about selling people something. And so there's an inauthenticity to marketing. And it's super interesting at the intersection of social media, because social media, it's the magic behind it when it works. When you think about someone like Jimmy, Mr. Beast, the person you see on camera is the person who Jimmy is, right? The great social media influencers are themselves. They're not playing a character. They're not trying to sell you something. By the way, it's why marketing on social media is so tricky. And I hate the term influencer, by the way. I always use creator, because if you know people who are successful in social media that are creators, they would never call themselves influencers. Like, the marketing industry came up with this term and making them into pitch men and women. And that's not what works. It doesn't actually move the needle in marketing unless they believe in the product authentically. And so my mission, and what CiviSocial teaches its local governments and departments within those governments, is your job is to communicate as storytellers. The operations of this office and much of the work in Doña Ana County goes unseen, and it leaves a void for people to fill in the blanks. And this is where misinformation and disinformation breeds, because we don't see the hard work of the people in this office. Or when we expand and think about the county, what is Public Works doing? What are our public safety people doing? What is government doing for us? It's really a huge universe. But in social media, there are over 6 billion posts every single day. And so where government is trying to market or message, it's just one of those posts. It's almost like dropping a pebble into the ocean. It just literally cannot be seen. But what we know as human beings is that story is something that really connects with us on a deeper emotional level. And if that story is authentic and the storyteller is telling that story in an authentic way, that is where connection is formed. And so and I think what you in the audience will begin to see over the coming weeks is a real transformation in how the content from the clerk's office and from the county as a whole begins to look and feel different, because the idea of telling the story, of having authenticity, of showcasing the amazing people that do the work here in local government as characters in a story, and that story as their service, and that service is to you, can be wildly effective in creating that bond and connection between the people this organization serves and the people that do that service.
I love that. I love that you mentioned misinformation and disinformation. It's something we've been really trying to combat, especially with like podcast episodes like this. We're trying to tell people, you might hear something in the news or see it on social media, but it doesn't mean it's true. We can guide you through the truth. And I mean, it's been a challenge for sure. But
there are a lot of people who, and I think I struggle with the intent. I don't know the intent of misinformation. I mean, there are bad actors. So there are people that have agendas and are using misinformation and disinformation as a weapon to move their personal prerogatives forward. But I really think the broader issue is the amplification. When somebody picks up on something that a bad actor is trying to seed into the ecosystem, because social media is such powerful technology, it can amplify and be repeated and retweeted and reposted. And then it starts to become true because you've gone from somebody with an agenda who's trying to seed something, but then as it moves through the ecosystem, people that don't have malintent, who may just simply not know, begin to pick it up. And when they share it with their neighbors and friends, that's when it becomes challenging, right? So a lot of times what I see in the work that I do is that local government will try to combat false information in comments. It's like playing whack-a-mole. And where I think it can be much more effective is simply in really telling compelling stories. It goes back to your question, right? Like, if you're seeing things that are simply being repeated and are untrue, how do we create a story? Now, I'm going to give you an example. It's not necessarily clerks related, but I think it comes through. So I was working with a community in Florida, and that community has a ton of growth. It was a smaller town. It's now exploded into a mid-sized city, and they're growing fast. And so with growth comes infrastructure problems, right? They're seeing a lot more potholes because they used to be orange groves, and now they're roads and streets and businesses and residences and all that stuff. But government's complicated, right? So the state of Florida has certain main thoroughfares that they maintain through Florida Department of Transportation. The county, Polk County, has certain roads that they're responsible for, and the city has its roads. And so, you're a county organization, or you're part of a county organization, and you have certain things that you can do, but then the city of Las Cruces has other things, and there's natural confusion. So in this particular community in Florida, people were really pissed off that the city is getting more and more potholes, and the situation has, created some damage to their cars, and they get angry. But the issue is that the state of Florida just hasn't caught up with maintaining their roads, and Polk County has been a little slower. The city itself has done a really great job. They put priority, but there is misinformation. People on social media are saying the city is not doing its job, and the evidence of that is these potholes. And so how do you communicate it? Well, there's two ways that we could go about that. We could say, we put up a flyer or a Canva post, as they're typically called in the industry, and say, we are responsible for these streets, and we are not. It's that pebble in the ocean. What we decided to do in Lake Alfred was create a game show. When I say game show, I mean like a 60 to 90 second game show called "Whose Pothole Is It Anyway?"
I love it.
Right? Like, it's great.
That's great.
And then they can, people select which they think whose road is it, and that people are familiar with game shows. They want to play games, like they're involved in the story. And of course, at the end, it's like, look, Lake Alfred, if you see a problem, tell us about this pothole. If it's ours, we'll fix it. If it's not, we'll let the other agency know. But it's getting them information in a way that's compelling, entertaining, and story-driven. And that is how you combat misinformation. Just giving facts against other facts
boring.
It's not going to work.
Right. So, Sam, what have you learned about Doña Ana during your time here?
This is an awesome question. In addition to the fact I got to see Roadrunners, and I love Roadrunners. I used to live in California. We have nowhere near as many. I also have enjoyed your Chili's and the hot food. I've gone to several of the local restaurants. And one thing I learned, you have a wine. You actually have wineries here. That I did not know.
We have a wine fest twice a year too.
It's wild. Awesome. Like, I've tasted some local wines. I did not know. Buffalo, where I'm from, has ice wine. People don't know that, but and the wines were good. So like that, really have loved being here. Specific to what I do, you guys are the youngest demographic county I have worked with thus far. Most of the communities, and I always do a demographic poll. So I'll go into census data and I'll look at age cohorts, right? So they bucket them in decades. So like, 0 to 9, 10 to 19, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like a bar graph, right? Your average age in this county is like 34, I want to say. So that's the average. And the reason I do this is platforms behave differently. So on Facebook, yes, if you look at the macro data, it's a pretty broadly used and broadly trafficked platform. Like it hits a lot of age demographics. However, if you go a layer deeper and look at who the actual heavy users of Facebook are, which tends to be people my age and older, like 55 plus is kind of the core demographic for Facebook. Doesn't mean young people don't use Facebook, but it probably means that young people are on Facebook once or twice a week to check in with their parents or grandparents, not that they're actively engaged on Facebook. Why is this important? Most local governments have chosen Facebook as their primary form of communication. That poses a problem for a county like Doña Ana because your primary demographic, this is what's interesting, like most cities and counties that I work for, the primary demographic is Instagram, right? It sort of sits in that millennial touches X, touches Z, but it's sort of in that space. And that's typical for most local governments. There are some that it is prime Facebook. I've not worked with a prime Facebook city. I've seen some demos on cities that have expressed interest in working with us. And Facebook is not a platform that I specialize in because my product is much more focused on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. But the most interesting fact about Doña Ana is when I do my demographic overlay, which is like which platforms serve the most amount of people and why, you are a TikTok county, right? The primary group that you want to talk to is on TikTok. And I've not seen that. So really important that we get information. Another fun fact about TikTok, of all the platforms, and I exclude X. X is interesting because it just doesn't serve, it's not as scaled. Like TikTok has 170 million users and their users tend to be very active. X has 108 million users, but only 10% are really active on the platform. So you have to, I'm very data focused on this, but like when we look at, I think in TikTok, 60-ish% of the audience looks at, when we look at X, Twitter, 60% are looking for news. It's the reason that they use the platform. The next most trafficked is TikTok. 52% of the users on TikTok frequently and sometimes exclusively are getting news and information from that platform. So when we think about the work that you do here in the clerk's office about encouraging people to participate in democracy, to learn about history, and to make sure that their voices and votes are counted, as well as to get information about the services that you provide, TikTok is an ideal platform not just because it serves the demographics that you're talking to, but also because, unlike many communities, this is where your core audience is. So there's a huge opportunity for you guys through that platform to broaden your reach and connect with the people who live in this county.
That's awesome. So what would you recommend then for maybe people like us who we obviously have audiences that, people can vote from 18 to whenever, so how do we kind of bridge that gap and make sure we're reaching out to the younger people, but also giving information to the older people?
It's a great question. So I think there has been we talked about marketing and background of marketers. So one of the things I think that marketers have done really a poor job at, just because they've never really been inside a platform or managed anything at scale, there's this false belief that that you use something called cross-posting, meaning if you make a piece of content for Facebook that you then just push it onto Instagram and then you push it onto TikTok and then you push it onto YouTube and voila, right? The more platforms, the more eyeballs, and that's how it works. The problem is if we think about the platforms as the new versions of what used to be television, right? You would never make a show for Nickelodeon that would then go on to HBO, that would then go on to PBS, that would get, and that's this, and I don't know why that approach has been applied. So yes, for an office like yours that is talking to a wide demographic or any local government, it doesn't mean like leave Facebook, only focus on TikTok. Just like the problem is right now, it's only focused on Facebook and not focused on these other platforms. The idea is that each platform requires its own specific programming strategy that speaks to the audiences that exist on those different platforms.
I have another question. Red or green?
Red or green?
Chili.
Oh, that's a hard one for me. I think, well, my favorite color is green. I love chili. I gotta go green, not just because of the color, but like flavor profile.
Yeah.
And definitely, I'll eat both, and I love both. But I would say if I was like, the desert island, you can only eat one food. It's got to be red or green chili. I got to go with green.
Good. We just have to ask everybody.
We do.
Especially
We do.
New Yorkers. Vern's a former New Yorker too. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, don't get me started on chicken wings because I can give you a whole long lecture on the buffalo wing, and so like as you guys are passionate about chilies, I have like very specific things. Audience, if you ever go to Buffalo, New York, I'm giving you one piece of really important information. Do not order ranch with your chicken wings. It is truly offensive to the people of Buffalo. You got to do blue cheese. Blue cheese, blue cheese, blue cheese.
Blue cheese.
Back to the show.
It's an important message. Cool. Do you have any other questions?
No, I just really got so much out of your presentations, and I wanted to thank you for that because we are the heart of media right here in this room, and we have some ideas flowing now.
Well, I'm very excited. I'm always honored and thrilled to be invited by local agencies and getting the opportunity to work and share my knowledge. For me, again, this is a mission. I chose, as I mentioned before, not to do long-term consulting because I want to help as many local governments as I can, because and I think you've been through my training now, so once you understand social media and understand how to effectively engage, it's kind of like you think differently, and that's the point of what I do. It's not to make money. It's not to go on this long, entrepreneurial journey that makes me successful. It's about making each of the agencies that I work with successful, and then hopefully, I'll leave your audience with, and I think it's really important. It goes back to your mission of like history and democracy. The reason I do this is because I want, over the course of the next 10 years that I'm doing this, that Doña Ana and however many dozens or hundreds of agencies like yours that I work with, that I create a connection and that you create a movement. And that movement is about reconnecting people with the people that serve them in government. And by sharing those best practices, by engaging as departments across this country and sharing the good work that you all do, I think that we can begin to heal. And that healing, like so many things, local government leads the way, and your state government, and then of course Washington follow along. You guys are at the bleeding edge of leadership. As I mentioned, you're the 15th agency I've worked with, and it's been an ultimate privilege for me to be here, first in New Mexico. I hope to be back. I love New Mexico.
Yes.
This has been an amazing experience.
You're always welcome here to Doña Ana. So.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Preserving History and Democracy. I want to say thanks to Sam once again for joining us. Thanks to Bernardine Caporale for joining us as well. Thank you to Jacob behind the camera, and thank you to Noemi for helping us set up as well. My name is Cynthia Mendoza, Communications Coordinator for the Doña Ana County Clerk's Office. We'll see you next time.